paleontology fieldwork in a diverse array of locations seems to be of great interest to you. And so I was wondering if your international background as a Belgian living in South Africa and now pursuing research at the AMNH has played a part in this interest, and if so, in what way?
Sure. So, I never spent a lot of time in Belgium. I moved from Belgium when I was 2, so I would definitely consider myself a South African more than a Belgian. But that being said, I did go to a French school until I was 18. And so being at the French school meant that I was, especially, it's a French school in South Africa. So I was, I grew up with people, French-speaking people, but from all sorts of different countries, Francophone countries. So that could be anywhere around the world, a lot of African countries, but obviously a lot of European countries as well. So I was always around like a lot of different cultures. And then living in South Africa, you're often around people with a lot of different backgrounds because there are a lot of different cultures in South Africa. And then, so yeah, I've always really enjoyed the traveling and the field work in different locations, because you get to just hang out with people who have very different backgrounds. And I think that people with different backgrounds always bring something different to the table. And I like that combination of, of people that look at things in a slightly different way and have a different way of approaching the situation. Always makes it much more interesting to me. So maybe that's where it comes from. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good response. I think it's always good to get different perspectives. And I mean, I guess it's the same for me because I live in New York City and there are just so many people from diverse areas around here that it's so easy to be in a group of people or have a group of friends, or just when I go into the workforce to have like a group of colleagues that are from so many different fields that I can only imagine it's going to be beneficial to me to have so many different points of view and stuff in the same area working together. So
yeah, and I kind of look at science in a similar way. I like to collaborate a lot. I have quite a few papers with a lot of co-authors, and I think that helps us better, not science, I mean, just the question that we're approaching in science, because everyone looks at a question differently and everyone will have something different that they can bring to the table, and a different way that they approach the question and interpret the data and stuff. So I do think, I think it makes for more in-depth and interesting discussions at the end.
Did you have an experience or a moment growing up or even later when you first realized that you wanted to devote the rest of your life to STEM? And if so, how did this realization make you feel?
So my dad used to be, before we moved to South Africa, he was a general practitioner. So he was a doctor, but he worked for the paramedics. So he worked for the equivalent of 911 in Belgium. And he always had like the wackiest stories about, like his work and like the things he had seen, and especially anatomy. And the anatomy is something that I caught on to very, very quickly. There's not like a specific moment, but I think I was always so fascinated by the science behind the medicine and things like that I was, I decided that I would do something that has, involves anatomy at some point in my life. And so at the French school, when you get to 3 years before you graduate, you have to pick a sort of like, you specialize in this specific area. So you can specialize in science or in economics or in linguistics or whatever. And I picked science. And I think for me, it was never really a question. I've always loved science. I've always loved maths. I've always loved anatomy. It's just, yeah. And maybe it's probably from growing up listening to my dad and his stories of being a doctor.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I think that a common theme throughout all of the interviews I'm giving is that the parents have had a large effect on what, the people I'm interviewing end up doing. Like in my case, my dad doesn't do anything in science, but he loves science. It's like a hobby of his. So from I guess like you, from an early age, I was exposed to, paleontology and archaeology and biology and things like that, astronomy. So I was definitely growing up with a lot of knowledge of that. And so it was a natural thing for me to become interested in when I got a bit older.